I have 7:31. Are we waiting on?
We're waiting on you to start the meeting.
Oh, okay. And is Amy with us this evening? Sorry, I didn't catch it.
I'm here.
Okay. Okay, we will get my screen up. Okay, we will call the meeting to order and begin with I'm sorry, Amy, if we can have a roll call, please.
Mr. Fuller? Mr. DeLomo? Mr. Manel? Mr. Van Wagner?
Here.
Mr. Ashkenazi?
Here.
Mr. Mamie? Mrs. Tallarico?
Here.
Mr. DeGennaro?
Here.
Mr. Puglielli?
Here.
Madam Chair?
Here. Board. Okay, thank you, Amy, and we will have the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag of the
United
United
States
States.
of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The notice requirements of the open public meeting law for this meeting have been satisfied. A copy of the notice having been sent to the Asbury Park Press and the Coaster and filed in the office of the Township on July 16th, 2021. No new cases will be started after 10 o'clock p.m. and no new testimony taken after 10:30 p.m. In addition, the applicant will be limited to 45 minutes of testimony. All meetings will be video and audio taped and shown on the Township of Ocean Community Cable Channel, Channel 22 on Verizon Fios and Channel 77 on Cablevision. And Amy, if we can present the minutes for approval, January 20th, 2022.
Can someone make a motion on that?
Oh, I'm sorry, a motion to approve the minutes for January 2022.
I'll make a motion.
And I will second. Amy, if you can please call the roll.
Mrs. Tallarico?
Yes.
Mr. DeGennaro?
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli?
Yes.
And Madam Chair?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, and if we can have a motion for the February 17th, 2022 minutes.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second. Amy, if you can call the roll.
Okay. Mr. Van Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi?
Yes.
Mrs. Tallarico?
Yes.
Mr. DeGennaro?
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli?
Yes.
And Madam Chair?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. We have two resolution memorializations, both bulk variance approvals. Chris and Jen Beeman, Block 78, Lot 1, 1024 Bendemeer Avenue, Ocean, bulk variance approval. Philip Scher, Block 22, Lot 54, 264 Roosevelt Avenue, Ocean, bulk variance approval. And if someone will offer,
I'll offer.
I'll second. And Amy, if we can call the roll.
Mr. Van Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi?
Yes.
Mr. DeGennaro?
Yes.
And Madam Chair?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, the following cases will be carried to June 16th, 2022 via Zoom. Ashkenazi, Block 11.01, Lot 3, 1036 Norwood Avenue, Ocean. Daniel J. Sarower, Block 46, Lot 10, 107 Parker Avenue, Ocean. Seaview Corporate Park Limited, Block 149.01, Lot 1.01, 2603 Route 66 in Ocean. Cordoba Ocean LLC, Block 205, Lots 2 and 3, 1309 Herbert Avenue, 1312 Allenhurst Avenue, Ocean. Raymond Saka, block 40.02, lot 17, 502 Deal Road, Ocean. Barbara Schramm, block 9, lot 36.05, 39 Larchwood Avenue, Ocean. Sorora Land Development, block 22, lots 85 and 85.01, 280 Norwood Avenue, Ocean. 199 Highwood Road LLC, block 25.16, lot 2, 199 Highwood Road, Ocean. And for our first case, it's a continued case. I will turn the chair over to Vice Chairman Van Wagner due to professional reasons.
Okay, thank you. So we have our first case of the night is continued case. Amy McGovern, block 63, lot 14, 600 Palmer Avenue, West Allenhurst, zone R4. An application to construct a 450 square foot in-ground pool and associated concrete patio, as well as a proposed driveway extension on a corner lot with variances for front yard setback. And know this case we heard last month, and I believe came to a conclusion as far as the board consideration was concerned. And so I'll just, I guess, ask Mark to ask one last time whether any members have questions before we entertain a motion. So I'll do that.
Or the public, it was kind of left open for a glitch in the
Yeah.
notice.
I was gonna
Okay.
say, yeah, I'm sorry, public too. So yeah, I guess if I was gonna ask board members first, then I was gonna do. So if no board members have questions, and any members of the public have any questions related to this application.
And Mr. Chairman, and Amy, just wanted to let you know I joined, I signed on a couple minutes ago.
Okay, and that's good to know. And also, Mr. Fuller, just want to indicate for this first application, now that you're on, you on the tape of the prior hearing,
I did, yes.
and so that and you listened to that tape for this hearing.
Yes, yeah, I listened to the last month's tape for this hearing, and I have no
Mark,
question.
I don't know if you had, Mark, is that sufficient? So Mr. Fuller,
Well, we have a form that Amy will send him and he'll sign, but I
Yes.
believe him.
I
believe
also,
him.
I didn't know
Mr.
if you needed to ask
Puglielli,
him. Go ahead.
Mr. Puglielli also listened to the recording and signed
Right.
the hearing form.
So both of those gentlemen are now eligible to vote tonight on this application.
Right.
Okay, great. So I don't know if we have anybody from the public who is interested or has anything to comment on this application. Hearing none, I guess we can entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion.
Second.
I'll second.
Amy, you want to call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Fuller,
Yes,
Mr. Van Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mr. DeGennaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli.
Yes.
Okay, and then I guess
Well,
next
I
we
have
get-
circulated, Rich, I've circulated to everybody, but you've all seen a proposed draft of a resolution. If that's satisfactory, somebody could offer it and second it and move on.
I'll offer a
offer it.
positive resolution. Or if somebody else already did, I'll second, but I don't know who offered.
I can offer. I don't know if.
Hey, okay, and I'll
Okay,
second.
okay, Mr. Fuller,
yes,
Mr. Van Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mr. DeGennaro,
Yes.
and Mr. Puglielli.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's it. Yeah, I'm sorry, I got a bit of a delay with you guys. So if you can hear me all right, then I think that's all for me, right?
Thank you all for your time.
Oh, you're welcome. Amy, do we need this, well, Amy Stewart, does Amy or Ms. McGovern need to follow up with you on anything, or is it all done now?
I'll send her a signed and sealed resolution and instructions on how to publish.
Okay, great. So then, I guess on to case number 2, back to Ms. Beal.
Thank you. Case number 2, Wahid Iraqi, block 35.04, lot 1, 15 Nottingham Road, Ocean, zone R2. This is an application to change the grade of more than 2 feet in various areas of the property in connection with the construction of the proposed retaining wall. And the attorney for the applicant is Mr. Jared M. Pappy. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Pape. He's Ken Pape's son, so Pape, correct?
Pape.
That is
Okay.
correct, yes.
Okay, Mr.
Is
Pape?
my audio coming through clearly?
Yes, I'm
Yes,
just, okay, I was just trying to locate you. Sorry, Hollywood Squares here. Okay,
Right.
Mr. Pape. And before we begin, I would just like to hear from Mr. Matlack with his report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I won't go into the details of the application. I think you just read that. But the applicant's looking for a variance for a modification in grade of more than 2 feet. So a couple of things that I noted was that the applicant should specify the combined height of the proposed retaining wall and the fence that's shown on the plans. Provide some testimony about the changing grade at the rear of the property. And there's also, it looks like the fence goes into the front yard along Coventry Drive. So they would need to comply with the fence ordinance regarding fence in the front yard. And the last thing I noted was it looks like there are some existing trees in the front yard. They're not shown on the site plan. So some clarification on that, whether the trees are to remain or be taken down. And I think we can hear from the applicant now.
Okay, and for the record, for this, Jim Higgins, our planner, is not here this evening. He has no substantive concerns with this project, nor any of the others throughout the evening, but keep the record going.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pape.
Hi, good evening, Madam Chair and board members. My name is Jared Pape. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Heilbron Pape, and our firm represents Wahid Iraqi. Thanks for the summary and introduction. Before we begin, I would just like to confirm that the notice package that we sent was found to be sufficient to give this board jurisdiction.
Notices are adequate and jurisdiction is established.
Thank you. We have really one witness this evening. It's Chester DiLorenzo, who will be testifying as both the professional engineer and professional planner. The applicant, Wahid Iraqi, is on the line and available. I do not intend to call him as a witness, but he's available in case there are any specific questions from the board. So if it's acceptable at this time, I would ask that we have Mr. DiLorenzo sworn in.
Mr. D, right hand, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth?
I do.
Okay, and have you testified before this board previously?
I have. In fact,
Okay.
recently I've done it on Zoom.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. DiLorenzo, for the board, could you please provide your professional and educational background? Keep in mind that we're going to be asking you to testify as both a professional engineer and professional planner.
Certainly, I'm a graduate engineer from Villanova University from a very long time ago. I've been a professional engineer in the state of New Jersey for some 37 years, a professional planner in the state of New Jersey for some 36 years, and professional land surveyor in New Jersey for some 35 years. I appear before boards of this nature about once a week, and not to belabor the board, I'd ask that be considered minimum information for me to speak before this body. I do know how to handle land use matters for engineering and planning, and again, I appeared before this board before.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So, Mr. DiLorenzo, I'm going to ask that you take us through the site and give an overview of existing conditions and what's being proposed. And when we get to the proposed improvements, I'm hoping you can touch on the points raised by Mr. Matlack, which included some clarification on the combined height of the fence and retaining wall, the change in grade that's causing one of the variances, and clarification on the existing trees along Coventry Road and along the rear of the site, whether those are to remain.
I'd be happy. The property is situated at Lot 1, Block 3504, which is also known as 15 Nottingham Road. The house contains an existing two-story frame dwelling. The lot is some 26,685 square feet. It possesses adequate setbacks from the front, side, and rear, so that no variance for the building will be existing or proposed. However, due to the severe slope on the property, and when I say severe slope, it slopes from around elevation 102 down to elevation 85. So there's about 17 vertical foot of slope across this lot. The majority of it's in the rear yard. So where we intend to put the pool, we have the problem of the fact that the existing ground across the width of the pool slopes some 4 vertical feet. So it's to put a flat pool in there would be impossible. So for the first time in a long time, I'm appearing before this board, not with a flexible C2, but with a legitimate bulk variance for hardship, because I cannot get the land behind the dwelling flat enough in order to put a pool in. In order to put the pool in, we're on the negative side of the slope, by the way. I think the board should be aware of that. With the rear yard property owners of lot 11 and lot 2 both being higher than this lot, they will effectively be looking down into the backyard. We're looking to put in a short retaining wall. The highest point, it's 3.7 vertical feet, and to have the pool cut into this flat area. And on top of the wall, we're looking to put a 4-foot fence, which would make the combined height of the wall and the fence 7.7 feet. But at that elevation, it will still be 4 feet below the contiguous property owners' properties. So they would still be looking down into our property, and we would not be impacting anyone from an aesthetic standpoint with regards to fence height. To move along, I believe from Mr. Higgins' standpoint, with the exception of the bulk variance for the change of elevation of 2 vertical feet, that the site more or less conforms to the ordinances. I have read the ordinances. I've read and understand the master plan, and we're not looking to countermand any aspects. We're just simply asking for a variance to put a pool in our own backyard. The aesthetics of the property are such that the property is well landscaped. The property owner has landscaping along Coventry, as well as along the rear property line and side property line. We're looking to maintain all landscaping. We're not looking to take out any trees at all with this application. However, we're looking to put the fence on the street side of the landscaping on Coventry Drive, such that the landscaping could still be seen. This is going to be an open Jarrah fence, but the fence would be between the street and the landscaping itself. I knew that it was pointed out that could be a problem from the engineer, and as such, I want to be aware that you'll still see the landscaping. However, we're looking to encase the entire thing in the proposed fencing. We're looking to have a pop-up broadcaster for stormwater runoff, because as the water runs down and around the retaining wall, it'll be on our pool deck. We're going to push it around the dwelling, so that all stormwater existing ends up on Nottingham Road, and in the proposed format will still end up on Nottingham Road. So we're looking to maintain the existing, and we're looking to existing drainage flow, of course, and we're looking to not impact any of our contiguous neighbors with this project. We are a corner lot on the corner of Nottingham and Coventry. Mr. Pape, I believe that's the extent of my direct.
Yeah, just to emphasize a couple of points. I know you covered them, but just clarification for the board. So the existing trees along Coventry and along the rear property line, which do provide substantial screening, currently are not being removed, nor is any landscaping being removed, correct?
They're proposed to be retained completely.
Right. And you mentioned the style of the fence. I believe in one of the reports, there was a question for clarification as the type of fence. It's my understanding that the color is it's a color and material. It's a black aluminum fence. Could you confirm that's correct?
The Jarrah fence is a metal fence. It's usually made from aluminum for corrosion purposes, but it's open and it's very attractive, and it conforms to the IRC pool code. And that's why it was chosen. You can see through it.
And just another point of clarification, you mentioned that there will be no change in terms of the drainage flow on the property, and that it will continue to flow toward Nottingham Road, correct?
That's correct. Existing stormwater comes off the rear property. They have a short retaining wall of about 2 feet. We have a short retaining wall of about 1 foot. It flows into our backyard. It flows around the dwelling to the north and to the south, and goes out to the corner of Nottingham in Coventry, and we intend to maintain that exact same flow direction.
I have no further questions of Mr. DiLorenzo. He is available to the board and board's professionals at this time.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to confirm, Mr. DiLorenzo, you said none of the trees will be removed?
That's correct. None of the trees, they're all going to be
Okay.
maintained.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board?
I do. You said that the property now is below the property around it?
That's correct. The backyard for lot 2 is around elevation 101. The property for the backyard for lot 11 is around elevation 101, and our backyard is around elevation 95. So the property is contiguous to this property, or 6 feet above us.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Just, I'm reading Jim's report, and he needs 2 variances. Obviously, the soil removal, he's changing the grade more than 2 feet, as he's indicated. And the second variance is for the height of the height of the fence, but not the location of the fence, I believe. Because even though it's in the front yard, since it's 4 feet or less and it's open, that does not require variance as far as I'm concerned. And I don't believe either our zoning officer or Jim has cited that. What they have cited is the height of the fence, period, is 7.7 feet, because you combine the fence with the retaining wall if they're within 10 feet of each other. So that's the second variance that's required. It would be for the height of the fence. But
That
you've
would be the
given us
fence.
testimony as to the reasoning.
I'm sorry, Mr. Steinberg, I didn't mean to step over you. That's the fence. Every wall in Ocean and every other township that's more than 30 inches in vertical height requires a fence. So we're putting a 4-foot fence on top of the retaining wall behind our patio to protect people from falling off the wall. Since the wall is 3.7 feet and the fence minimum for pools, it has to be 4 feet. That's where the 6.7 foot of fence and wall height comes from.
But I don't think you need a variance for the fence in the front yard along Covington,
We do not, sir. You're right.
because it's an open fence.
Yes.
All right, if solid, we only allow 3 feet, open, we allow 4. And that's not
Mark,
gonna be
just to
retaining.
clarify on that, I had a conversation with the applicant earlier today, and because the plan didn't indicate the type of fence, it was unclear whether it was a solid fence or
Gotcha.
open. So
Okay.
I had mentioned that may be an issue that needs to be discussed, but I agree with the testimony. The open Jarrett fence doesn't
fine.
require
Okay.
that variance.
All right, just so we know which 2 variances are required.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, if we can have a motion to close?
Motion.
I'll second.
Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Van Wagner, Mr. Van Wagner.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry,
No, that's okay.
on mute.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGenaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
and Madam Chair.
Yes. And Mark, I actually wrote it down as you were speaking, so I believe we're looking for a motion for variance for the soil removal and for the height of the fence. So if someone will offer.
I'll
I'll
offer.
offer positive resolution on both those.
Second.
Okay.
Oh, Amy, if you can call the roll, please.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Van Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGenaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
and Madam Chair.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. Good night.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Okay, our next case is Cozy Kingdom LLC. Block
Excuse me,
20
Madam Chairman,
Yes,
could you please give us the date? We missed the date for the Seaview. Is that the Arbor Manor property that's by Nobility Crest? Could you give us the date? I missed that because I see a lot of the neighbors are still on this meeting, and it's not necessary we be on this meeting.
for Seaview Corporate Park, correct?
Yes, please, yes. What was
That
the
is
date?
continued to June 16th.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
But on June 16th, we're going to announce another special meeting date. Is that correct, Ron?
Yes, and that will be in July.
So there will
So
be
not-
no hearing on June 16th. It's just being
Okay.
carried so that it will not have to be renoticed for a meeting in July. So on June 16th, that date will be available.
Thank you very much. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. Okay, our next case, Cozy Kingdom LLC, Block 25.13, Lot 9, 218 and 218 half Chatham Avenue, Oakhurst, Zone R4. This is an application for a certification of non-conforming use to legitimize this property as a two-family. Once established, they seek an expansion of that non-conforming use to build a deck and reconfigure a driveway. The attorney for the applicant is Ms. Jennifer S. Krimko.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Jennifer Krimko on behalf of Ansel, Grimm and Aaron. I'd like to move a couple things into evidence, and we're only seeking the expansion of the non-conforming use if necessary, and I'll get through that as I go through my opening. And it's consistent with what's in Mr. Higgins's letter. And I can summarize that once I move some things into evidence, if that's okay.
Yes.
Okay, so A1 are the architectural plans by Passman Ercolino Architects dated 1/24/22. A2 is a very lengthy and redacted history of use on the property. And that was prepared by the principal of the entity who owns the property, Richard Metting, whose family has owned this since, I believe, the 1930s, as you'll read. Excuse me. And then A3 is just a color rendered plot plan that I submitted electronically at the request of Mr. Higgins after a technical review meeting. So by way of summary, the subject property has two structures on it. There's a front structure, which I'm going to call the main house, and a rear structure, which is the additional house, as well as a framed garage. As can be seen in the very lengthy history, and I can tell you all that I've been almost practicing law for 23, 24 years now. I have never in the entirety of my practice ever seen a more thorough history of a property to justify the pre-existing non-conforming use. Almost always we're forced to rely on tax records or architect's testimony as to the state of the house or how it was constructed. As you see here, it is unquestionable that this two-family use has been in effect since the 1930s, which predates your ordinance, and your board planner confirmed that and came to the same conclusion. So I will say that since it was submitted and you had the opportunity to review it, I'm not going to belabor it by bringing my client on to walk us through the 100 pages as to all of the proofs. I'm going to ask that it stand on its own unless there are any specific questions as relates to it.
Mr. Matlack or any board member, are there any specific questions?
No questions regarding the history of it.
So thank you. So as the board knows and is outlined in Mr. Higgins's letter, the municipal land use law requires a certification of non-conforming use. One of two ways: you can obtain it from a zoning officer or administrator within a year of the zone change, or you have to come to the board with an application like we are tonight. Since the municipal land use law didn't exist in 1940, when the ordinance went into place rendering it a non-conforming use, it was impossible to do so. So we're just here seeking from you in resolution form confirmation that it's a pre-existing non-conforming two-family use. I believe that has been established and you don't have any questions. With regard to whether or not there is an expansion, as Jim had indicated, if you consider it to be an expansion, it would be a technical expansion. Typically, when there's an expansion of a non-conforming use, it means that the structure, not only is the structure in which the use being operated being expanded, but the intensity of the use is expanding, meaning more bedrooms are added. Really, in a single-family residential, really the only way to increase the intensity of the multifamily use is to add a unit or add a bedroom. As you'll hear from the testimony from the architect, who we'll introduce in a moment, all we're planning to do is reconfigure the driveway and the yard and redo some stairs and add a deck for the rear house. And that's the sum and substance of the application. So if I may introduce Anthony Ercolino. I see him there, his name, so I'd ask him to turn his camera on.
Mr. Ercolino?
Anthony? Okay, well, he's catching up. If I can, Amy, may I share my screen? And while I'm setting this up and I'm walking through some of this, Ms. Beal, if it's okay, I'm asking my client, who I know is on the line, to call Mr. Ercolino to see if he's having technical issues. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So the architectural plans that were originally submitted showed the plot plan and very simply show, and I'm pointing at it with my cursor here. There's an existing porch here that was being removed and replaced in the same footprint. There was concrete steps here that were being removed and new steps put in. And the only addition that we're proposing is this wood deck right here. And the area, we're proposing to get rid of some of the concrete and make it pavers to make it more aesthetic, so it can function both as a patio and a driveway. And then if you see here the shading, there's a little bit of an area of added driveway in a fully conforming location. And when I go to the color rendering, you can see, and I'll blow this up because I don't know if you have it in color. What's in red is the existing driveway. And what's not in red is what's new. So this area here is new, and a little bit of this walkway is new. And on this side where it's fully conforming is new. And that's really it as far as the application is concerned. So to the extent the board deems that the addition of a deck is expanding the non-conforming use, we'd ask for that variance. If you agree that it doesn't, then we would just ask for the certification for the pre-existing non-conforming use. And it may be just, and I'll defer to Mark, but maybe if the board is intending on voting favorably, perhaps you could include the expansion just to cover everybody, just in case.
I would agree with that. If the board determines that this is a pre-existing non-conforming use, then that expansion would require the variance and it would be simultaneously granted.
And we're not waiting on Mr. Ercolino.
It doesn't
Okay.
appear that he's coming, and obviously if there's any questions as to the plans that were reviewed, but nothing's changing inside any of the structures, which are really architectural. Everything that was just shown on the plans is all that's changing.
And then if this were a conforming use, these additions would not require variances.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Okay, any questions or comments?
I'm sorry. Yes, I have a question. Is it currently now being used as a two-family?
Yes, it has. It has been consistently since 1930 something. My
Right.
client, although it's in an LLC, it's been in the same family all those years. It was my client's grandfather.
Any other
I
questions?
miss him. Are you going to present some testimony as to?
No, I'd indicated that we're gonna rely on what was submitted as the history of use. Because all he would be doing is repeating what was moved into evidence as A2.
The 133-page,
Document
yes.
clearly delineating that it has always been a two-family use, as confirmed by Mr. Higgins's report.
Madam Chair, I just have a couple of things on this. We had a technical review meeting with the applicant and Ms. Krimko, and the things that showed up in my report were regarding drainage and potential impacts to neighboring properties. It was said by the applicant that nothing drains toward the neighbors. It all drains towards the driveway and then down the driveway towards the street. So if I'm fine with that. I don't see any issue with that from a drainage standpoint. And the only other thing was I wanted to see construction details for the proposed driveway and paver patio, which could be submitted as a condition of approval.
And that would be fine, Madam Chair. If the board required that, we'd be happy to provide it.
Any other questions or comments from board members?
I just had a question. So on the certification of use, so whatever was submitted, I didn't review anything. So am I supposed to? I'm not sure.
I'd assume that you had, so if you haven't, I'm happy to introduce Mr. Metting and have him give a summary.
Well, what I've looked at, I'm okay with the development as proposed. So it's really just a matter of semantics then, right? Because
right, and I can stipulate to what the document says. It basically shows advertising for the property for rent as far back as the 30s and 40s. It shows leases, it shows tax records indicating it was a two-family. As I said, and as a fellow attorney, you know, when when a client comes to you and prepares something this comprehensive, I have never in all my years practicing law seen anything more dispositive of a two-family use.
yeah, I'll accept that. Yeah, I just want, and so for me, that's more of a technicality anyway, because the substance of the application I'm good with, but I'm sorry. I'm good now. Thank you, Joanna.
I have a question.
Yes.
The reconfiguring of the driveway, what is the purpose of that? To add extra cars or to widen it to
Yes,
come off the street?
Absolutely. Allow me to share my screen again, Ms. Tellerico. So if you look, the red is what's existing. So what they're looking to do is widen it right here to allow for parking on the driveway because it's a bit narrow here. And they're looking to widen it here because they don't really use this area to park. So that way it could work as double as a patio. And then lastly, the walkway is very narrow here. So just widen the walkway here and widen the walkway here. That's it.
So how many additional cars would be able to park in that space?
A total of 5 cars could park on this property. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1 in the garage. So 6 total if you were going to use the garage and the
And I just have one extra question. It has never been used as a business or right now, only because of the name of it kind
No,
of.
absolutely not. It has never been used as a business.
Okay.
I'm sure that you're seeing more and more that for insurance purposes and for liability purposes, even people, the homes they live in, they put in an LLC to protect it from, you know, any kinds of personal claims. So no, this is purely residential.
Residential.
Right.
Thank
And when you
you.
say business, other than the fact that one of the units has been rented out.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And it's also the case as an LLC, they need counsel to appear before us as well, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Believe me, after seeing what my client prepared, he didn't need me.
I didn't mean to minimize your role. I meant
No,
to.
no, no,
the technicality of the.
Joking aside, he could have done a great job on his own.
Okay. do we
I
have
just
any
wanted to
other-
offer that because that's more technical that way, but sorry.
Any other board members, questions or comments? Okay, public questions or comment? Anyone from the public, questions or comments? Not seeing it. Not seeing anyone. If we can have a motion to close.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Van Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGenaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so then.
I'm here too.
Oh,
Mr. Mamie's here.
Mr.
I vote
Mamie,
yes
that is-
as well.
okay.
okay.
Okay, so we're looking for,
A certificate of nonconformity and a variance to technically expand the nonconforming use by adding the deck.
okay. Sorry about that. Will someone offer?
I'll offer a positive.
Their
Second. Second.
Okay, Amy, if you can please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Van Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGenaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
And can I just ask Amy who seconded that?
Mr. DeGenaro.
Oh, okay. I was looking down. I'm sorry, I didn't see it laid up. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And let's see here. Okay, our next case is Devon Dam, Block 97, Lot 5, 1401 Chestnut Avenue, Wanamassa, Zone R5. This is an application to construct a home addition within the front yard setback on Sunset Avenue, as well as a proposed front porch in the front yard setback on Chestnut Avenue. And Mr. Dam, are you present?
Yes.
Okay, and if you can raise your right hand, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth?
I do.
Okay, first I will ask Mr. Matlock if he can summarize his report and address any or ask of any concerns.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this applicant is proposing to install a new attached garage, covered front porch addition, as well as a one-story and two-story addition to the existing home. The garage addition requires a variance as the minimum required front yard setback is 30 feet in the R5 residential zone. This is a corner lot on Chestnut and Sunset. The property currently contains a one-story single-family house with ancillary improvements, driveway, front and rear porch, concrete walkways. And the only comments I really had were if the applicant is going to be proposing any grading modifications as part of this application. I didn't see anything proposed on the plan, just want clarification on that. And I'd like to turn it over to the applicant.
Okay, and I'm sorry, Mr. Matlock, you wanted to know if he was going to address, what was it again?
Any grading modifications are proposed
Grading modifications,
that
okay.
might impact the neighboring properties.
Okay, Mr. Dam, okay, I see you now. Will you please tell us about your request and if you can address the question regarding any grading modifications, please?
Sure, thank you.
Did we swear, Mr.? I wasn't listening. I apologize. Did we swear him in?
I did before Mr. Matlack spoke.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Please continue.
Great. Bought the home in September of 2018 when it was just me and my wife. We have since added to our family. We have a young son, and we're going to have another kid in July. And our small home is starting to max out in size. So that is the reason that we're looking to expand the house. Adding the garage is really just to take up a lot more equipment and things in our home. So having space to store, getting a little more room in the house for when we do potentially expand. And the request for the front porch is really to help in the aesthetics and the look of the house. If we do go up and back, really want to avoid a box look to the house, and having a nice front porch would I think help it up and make it look better. In addition, the setback limited the depth of the porch, so you could only really fit 1 or 2 small chairs on there. So getting a few more feet out to incorporate the steps allows us to have a really a sittable front porch to, have dinner or have meals. The drawings were done by Passman Ercolino, who I think I have Don Passman on, my architect, as well. I'll ask for his comments here shortly. So we also have no plans to grade the site. We're not going to be doing anything as far as grading is concerned. I think that's everything that I wanted to introduce, and I would ask to have Don go ahead and follow up with his comments.
Okay, Mr. Passman, have you testified before the board previously?
Many times.
Okay.
Did you, you can swear me in, and then, I can state qualifications if you'd like.
Okay. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth?
Yes, I do.
And just briefly tell us about your qualifications.
Licensed in New Jersey in 1987. I graduated from University of Michigan with an architectural degree, got my license first in 1981. Got reciprocity in New Jersey in 1987. I worked on my own for 10 years from 1988 to 98. And then I partnered with Anthony Ercolino since 1998. And our office is in Ocean Township. I've testified in front of this board maybe 30 times at minimum.
So you haven't made it to 31 times yet, huh?
This might be 31.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Donald, you could be in the 300 range at this point in time.
I might be.
It's fair.
Okay, Mr. Passman.
Well, I've testified before this board and many others up and down the Jersey Shore.
We will certainly accept your credentials and experience. Thank you.
Okay, so the other report was from Kate Maloney, and there's another one from Mr. Higgins. So I don't know if you want me to address those or how you want me to proceed. You tell me.
Yes, and if you can address Mr. Matlack first, since he's here.
Oh. Yes, the site is relatively flat. And so in putting this addition on, there's no real change to the grading that we need to do. So the driveway that comes up to the house now will just be shifted over to the left, and it drains toward the front anyway, so that's going to be about the same slope. Other than that, the additions are on top and a little bit to the rear, and they don't impact the drainage or the grading at all.
That's fine, Madam Chair. I don't have any issue with that.
Okay. And Mr. Passman, looking at Mr. Higgins' report.
I mean,
Doesn't
yes.
look like there's anything.
He didn't have very much. I mean, if you want to go through the plans, I can. I mean, we don't have, I can share screen, or maybe Amy can do that, whatever. But again, it's a 1-story, house, a ranch with a basement that's about 6'9". It's not a huge basement. So the amount of living space that can be achieved is what it is now, which is like 2 really small bedrooms. There's only 2 bedrooms. There probably used to be 3, but it was amended at some point. So our addition is really to expand in the back and the kitchen. Again, everybody needs a bigger kitchen than they have. The master bedroom gets a little bit bigger also toward the rear. And again, the most important thing is what we're doing, which causes the variance, is on the left-hand side as you face the house is a garage. It's a 1-car plus garage, so you can have a car, you can have your recycling toters in there and your refuse toters. You can have some lawn equipment, et cetera, in there. You can put your outside chairs in there and storage. And we made it, just big enough. I tried not to make it too big or too small. So I kind of struck a 16-foot dimension, which allowed a 15-foot plus setback to the Sunset Avenue side, which is kind of consistent with the other houses on Sunset. Most of the houses on Sunset front on Sunset. This one fronts on Chestnut. And they have a meager, setbacks, very similar to this. So I don't feel like it was really being too close. As far as the front, the porch is a 7-foot deep, which at the porch level, it crosses over by about a foot. And then the property is angled, the property line is angled. So it gets to be about 2 or 3 feet of the other side. But part of the ordinance says that even your steps have to be within the setback, or at least 1 or 2 can protrude. So we're a little bit closer. I stated what the dimensions are to the absolute front step as being 26 feet or something like that. Let's see, Mr. Higgins has it. Well, let me look at my site plan. To the frontmost step, it's 24.98 feet, where 30 feet is required, but the actual porch is 27.81. So it's 2.19 feet in front of the property line on the minor street of Chestnut. So I feel like those are, and again, like my client said, it's more for aesthetics to have this porch, and to have a porch that was 3 feet to comply just made no sense. So the rest of the house, we tried to make a really good looking house that provided all the functions that my client wanted, with the extra bedrooms, extra bathrooms, and a great room in the back without any impact to the sides and rear, except for those 2 instances of the garage and the front porch. So, and the other variance, there's an existing side yard variance on the north side, which, as Mr. Higgins wrote in his report, that this house used to be in an R4 zone, which had a 10-foot side yard setback, and this being 10.17 feet, and we go parallel to it. And that way we get a larger master bedroom closet. And he didn't have a problem with these numbers. The lot coverage is well below what's permitted in the zone. It actually really complies with the R4 zone. So it's kind of like an R4 zone type of project. But, I just feel like it's an aesthetic improvement to the property and to the site, and it doesn't really impact any negative criteria to the neighborhood, in my opinion.
Okay. Does any board member have any questions or comments? Mr. Passman, I just want to make sure we have one picture in our packet. By any chance, do you have another visual that you were referencing?
You mean the documents that were submitted?
Yes.
Yes, I have those. Hold on a second. Oops. Let's see. That's that one. Wait a minute.
Are you sharing?
I'm trying to share. Oh,
Oh,
can you
okay.
let me share? Oh,
I believe you have host capabilities.
all right. Let me see if I can do that, because I'm not seeing my share come up. No. Hold on a minute. I just have to get it in the right position. Let me go back to this. This is the, I do have this, which shows the alignment of other homes in the area. That I do have.
Yes, we have that one. Was
Okay.
there another one that you were referencing when you were speaking?
I was trying to get my sheets up, but I don't know why it won't let me share this screen. Where'd it go? Yeah, I can't find it on my screen.
I can share that. I have that stuff.
Can you share that? Okay, thank you.
I just need permission.
Okay, you should have it now.
Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
How about now?
Now it's coming up. Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Let's see. Okay. So this is the front and rear elevations and photos of what is there today. And so the front elevation is at the bottom, faces east. And you can see, the front door on the right and the nice porch that gives you a grounding of the structure, visually. The two gables in the front show as one of the bedrooms and a bathroom. And then the garage is on the left-hand side. And the windows on the first floor are pretty much what they are. So we try to, the front portion is not that wide, so that it's not overtaking the front elevation. The other second story piece in the back is further back. The west elevation shows the great room. And this view on A6 shows the side elevations, and the one facing south is the one that's facing Sunset Avenue. Again, try to keep it low key, like a one-story piece. So the two-story portion is quite a distance back from Sunset. If you want to go to the floor plan, we can look at the floor plan as well, which is on the second floor is on page A4. And you can see the footprint of the second floor is not that great. It's set back more than 30 feet from each side yard, each front yard, I'm sorry. And this is an addition of 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. And a loft area like for the kids to play, have a play area up there because the basement's not that large. And going back to the first floor plan on A3, you can notice that the footprint is in there, the old footprint. And if you can look at it closely, you can see the shaded walls show the new walls, which is the garage on the left, the great room in the back, and the addition of the master bedroom, shower, and so forth.
That's the original line right there. That's the back wall of the current
Back
house.
wall kind of has a cantilever, so it shifts back. But again, there's very low impact, like people don't really see that. And the property's large enough that even the rear yard setback is still like 60 plus feet. So it doesn't, it's 63 feet when we're all done. So it's very, it's a nice sized piece of property. So it sits very well on it. We tried to keep in the middle portion of it is where the addition is. So it doesn't have a lot of 2-story impact to Sunset, Chestnut, or the the north side adjacent neighbor. So I feel like it's a very aesthetic, appropriate addition to this house.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Steinberg, if I'm not mistaken, because we don't have those, we need to mark those.
I believe they're on file.
They're in the packets.
Okay.
Well, no, they're not in the packets.
Yeah, they were sent as PDFs as part of the packet. The architect plans and the property
They're-
survey.
Yeah, they're sent they were sent to the board as a separate
But
attachment.
they were
Okay,
submitted
that's-
digitally and hard copy. I submitted.
Yeah,
6
Shawanda, they've
My
already
apologies.
been-
I must have just missed
Yeah,
it.
they're
then.
part
Okay.
of the packet. They're
Thank
part of what's been filed by the applicant, so we're okay with that.
Okay. All right. Any questions or comments from board members? Okay, I am not seeing or hearing any. Okay, and I'm sorry, Mr. Dam and Mr. Passman, were you finished?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Questions or comments from the public? Okay.
Make
we
a
do
motion,
have-
we close the public hearing?
Second. Okay, Amy, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Van Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGenaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
and Madam Chair.
Yes. And if I'm not mistaken, it looks like there's a variance for the front yard setback, side yard, and Mr. Steinberg, am I missing any?
Sorry, 1 second. I put that packet away. Okay, yes, front yard setback, side yard setback, and the accessory building in the front yard.
Okay.
Okay,
Someone will offer.
I'll make,
there's a shed in the front yard that's going to remain. That was previously approved.
Okay.
I'll make a motion for positive resolution.
I'll
Second.
second.
Okay, Amy, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Van Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGenaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, our next case, 436 Brookside Avenue, FTH 10, Block 25, Lot 141, 436 Brookside Avenue, Oakhurst, Zone R4. This is an application to construct a new single-family dwelling with covered porch within the designated 100-year floodplain. The attorney for the applicant is Jennifer S. Primko.
Good evening again, Madam Chair, members of the board. Fortunately, I'm sure everybody's going to be very happy to hear I'm going to be speaking a lot less on this one. This is a relatively simple application in that we have a lot that is entirely within the floodplain. So we need a variance for construction within the floodplain. And as you know, when a property is entirely within the floodplain, it has no buildable lot area because floodplains have to be deducted out from the lot area. So when you're starting with 0 buildable lot area, there's no way to quantify the coverage for building or impervious. The good news is that if this were not in a floodplain, this house would fully conform. And the last variance is for number of stories above grade. And again, as you know, a function of your ordinance, when you have to raise the finished first floor to be above the floodplain elevation, the crawl space or the ground floor now counts as a story. So while we're technically under your ordinance, 3 stories above grade, it's only 2 stories of living space. The height fully meets the ordinance. I have Patrick Ward here. He's the licensed engineer and professional planner. He can walk through with a little more detail what I just presented and talk about the DEP permitting that was required and obtained, and finally to address Mr. Matlock's letter. So,
Okay, Mr. Ward, will you raise your right hand? Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth?
I do.
And have you testified before this board previously?
I have.
he has numerous times, Madam Chair, and he's been accepted. But before I start with his testimony, do I need to move the plans in, or if they're part of the board packet, I don't have to move them in separately?
It's part of the board packet, so you don't have to move them in.
Okay. So, and we're not presenting any other witness and any other exhibits.
Exhibits, that's fine.
Okay, so Pat, I'm gonna, hopefully I can share my, yep, I can share my screen, Pat. Why don't you just briefly explain to the board what's existing there today and what we're proposing? Perhaps confirm the variances that I went through, and then let's address Mr. Matlack's letter.
Sure. So today the property is vacant. There's nothing there, no structures on site except for some miscellaneous improvements on the plan view here on the right side. So the applicant is proposing is this 3-story dwelling, and you see the footprint on the plan. The unique nature of this lot is that along the rear is Poplar Brook. We have a 50-foot riparian zone, a floodway and flood zone, and a limit of freshwater wetlands and a 50-foot buffer from those wetlands. So all of those environmental constraints have been confirmed with the DEP by proper permits, and the proposed construction of this home and the removal of some of the existing improvements within those buffers has been approved by the DEP. The applicant secured those permits prior to appearing before this board.
And we
So as you can
did
see-
submit them, right, Pat?
We did, yes.
Okay. And Pat, one more question. I'd indicated that the entire property is constrained. So is it accurate to say that we have a 0 buildable lot area?
That's correct, yes. So the entire property is in a flood hazard area. The rear along Poplar Brook is in what's called the floodway, which really limits any construction. All the
Importantly, if we weren't constrained and this was a regular lot without the environmental constraints, would our building coverage and our lot coverage fully comply?
Yes, it would. And if we were not constrained whatsoever, building coverage would be 24.8%, and the lot coverage would be 31.5%. So those are both under the maximum building coverage of 27 and 90% for impervious respectively. So.
Okay, and what grade is our crawl space at?
So it's proposed to be at elevation 21.8, which is really the backside existing ground elevation along the rear of the home.
Okay, and our finished floor elevation?
29.6.
Okay, so we're raising the first floor, and I'm going to pull up the architectural plans that are also part of the exhibit. So we're essentially raising the first floor about 6 feet from grade in an effort to keep it safe and out of the flood, the design flood elevation.
That's correct.
Okay, so when I had indicated there's 2 stories of living space, the first floor is here and the second floor is here. There's no livable attic space or anything like that, right?
That's correct.
And under the house is what?
So it's the applicant's desire to have that as open. So this will be up on, we'll call piles, and the applicant's desires to have that open to the floodwaters, which is really kind of an ideal circumstance for a flood hazard construction.
And then also we have the garage at the ground level, but as indicated in Mr. Higgins's letter, that doesn't count towards a livable story. So
correct.
So while we're 3 stories above grade, technically our height as measured both from the first floor, which is where it's typically measured, or even from the crawl space, which when it's 3 stories above grade is where we measure, we're still under the 35 feet.
Correct. We're 34.55 as measured from the crawl. So yes, we still comply with the physical height in the ordinance.
Okay, and Mr. Matlack's letter, he had asked for some additional flood venting, and we can agree to that?
Yes, well, we could work with that technical comment and the others within his letter.
Okay, and we'll provide the detail for the proposed depressed and driveway apron. And then lastly, we're proposing to fully conform with the tree removal ordinance to the extent that qualifying trees are removed. We will replace them pursuant to the ordinance and we'll provide a plan accordingly.
That's correct.
Okay, and at maximum, it's 4 trees, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so, and I believe that's the sum and substance, Madam Chair, of Mr. Matlack's letter, unless he has any additional questions.
Okay, Mr. Matlack, any other?
No, just the regarding the flood vents. There was a conflict between the site plan and the architectural plan. Just make sure those two match. I think the site plan showed 2 smart vents and the architectural showed 5. 4 is the minimum that I calculated. 5 is even better. So that would work if you match the architectural.
Will that, as Pat's going to make the revisions to address the trees and the other notes, we'll certainly make sure that those match.
Okay, thank you.
And Madam Chair, that is the sum and substance of the application.
Okay, thank you. Board members, questions or comments?
How does the height of the house compare to the houses around it?
It's similar in that the max height allowed is 35 feet and it's under the 35 feet.
Okay, any other board members? Questions or comments?
I have a question. The tree ordinance just changed. I don't believe you're allowed 4 trees anymore. I'm not sure if
I can address that, Mr. Mamie. Even under the old ordinance, a homeowner would be permitted to remove 4 trees a year. That doesn't apply for when you're coming to the board for a variance, so we'd be responsible for the tree replacement regardless.
okay. And
And we intended to replant.
yeah, I was just about to say it would help with flood control and stormwater as well to replant those trees.
Agreed.
That's it. That's all I got.
Ms. Talarico?
I have a question. You said that the property right now is vacant, right? There's no house or structure on it. Has the property ever had flood issues in the past?
Well, we know it has had flood issues in the past because it's well within the floodplain. The old house that was on it was at a much lower elevation, which is why it's been taken down, and which is why we're putting, much like when you see in Monmouth Beach, for example, where they know that the ocean floods, you raise the house above that flood level. That's similar to what we're doing here. So we anticipate that in bad storms, the creek will overflow and there'll be some flood, which is why we're putting it on pilings so there'll be no damage to the structure.
Okay, and the garage would be okay though, since that's not on the pilings?
Correct. The regulations don't apply to non-habitable space, but what we are going to be required to do, and I'm glad you raised it because I didn't share that. The DEP permit requires us to record the permit and then also record a deed against the property, which indicates what the flood hazard level is or when it is likely to flood. And to note that the driveway and the garage are within that area and have a possibility of flooding. So any future purchaser of this property would be put on notice by that deed of that issue.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board members?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm sure some of our board members, but most of our board members weren't here. We have approved previous applications similar to this with the pilings and the arrangements. I think they would be east of Monmouth Road area.
Okay.
I just have one more question. I'm sorry. Would there need to be a drainage or anything around the garage?
No, so I mean, I can let Pat try and give you the technical one. I'll give you the layperson's response.
Okay, I'm just trying to picture it.
Yeah, no, the flooding that they're concerned about has nothing to do with runoff. It's not, because of what we're doing. Because of the proximity to the creek, and because we know that the creek takes on all the runoff throughout the town as it heads towards the ocean, when it's full of capacity, the creek overflows. There's nowhere to drain to. The groundwater is too high. So the DEP doesn't, because we can't put drainage in and because we're not allowed to excavate within that flood area or take away any flood storage, that's why they have you raise it so we're not having any impact on the flood storage.
Gotcha. Okay.
Did I do it? Did I express that properly in lay terms, Pat?
I followed you perfectly.
Okay, but I'm saying from a technical perspective, do you agree that that's why there's no drainage proposed?
I do, and the flood vents act as a way to drain out the garage in the event of a flood, if the waters ever got that high. That's why they're required.
Yeah, that was pretty much what I was thinking. Thank you.
I followed it, so you must have done a good job.
Thanks, Rich.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
Madam Chair, I was wondering if we have any data on how often this floods, how often the street floods, so we can get a better understanding of how big of an issue it is. Is it really comparing it to Monmouth Beach where the ocean may come over or the river might come back? Is this an every year type thing? Because I know there are areas of the the town that are, flood every year? Is it a Hurricane Sandy type issue? Is there any information on that to just get me more comfortable improving it?
Well, I can tell you that it's not a matter of when it floods. There's no regularity to the weather in that the flood elevation that's established by FEMA is for the 100-year storm event, which means there's a 1% chance each year that the stream will get up to the elevation that's shown on the flood maps. And that's what we use to design. And that's what this application is using to design the first floor elevation.
And if I may, Mr. Fuller, just to compare, and this is a Google Earth shot of the street. And you see, this is a fully developed neighborhood with homes all around it. And this is the only vacant lot on the street. So we're essentially looking to do what everybody else in the neighborhood has done, only since we're doing this post the DEP regulations, a lot of these homes are much older than the DEP regulations. We're held to a higher standard, which is to follow all the rules and regulations from the DEP with regard to where the finished first floor is. So this is not as if we're going into an area where it's uninhabitable and we're making a dangerous situation. We're in a fully developed neighborhood and we're just seeking to construct a home in accordance with the state's safety regulations for it.
And can I follow up on Mr. Fuller's question there and your answer? Because I thought I heard you say that, so it's due to those regulations, it's the construction getting in the way of the flood that could inevitably come towards you, not your construction or your existence adding to the contribution to that flood area.
That's correct. That's a perfectly stated. So under the flood hazard rules, they have what's called a net fill, a zero net fill requirement. And what that means is you can't put any fill in a floodplain because the neighborhood drains to it and the water behind drains to it. So they want to make sure that we're not taking up any flood storage. And I will tell you that the fact that this parcel is up on the stilts was this property started back to the DEP back when Bill Fitzgerald was the board engineer, and this was something that he required. We would be able to create a crawl space here with flood vents, but my client decided to heed Mr. Fitzgerald's direction and go this way. There's two ways to do it. It can either be on pilings with it open underneath, or you can have a traditional crawl space with flood vents. Is that correct, Patrick?
That's absolutely correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments from board members? Okay, questions or comments from the public? Okay, if we can have a motion to close.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Van Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Mrs. Tallarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGennaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes. Okay, and Mr. Steinberg, please correct me if I'm wrong. I believe there's 3 variances: maximum building coverage, maximum number of stories, and the floodplains, correct?
And maximum impervious coverage, one more.
One more. Okay.
One more.
Someone
They go hand in hand for the reasons stated.
I'll move for a positive resolution on those.
Second.
Okay, me, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Van Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Mrs. Tallarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGennaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now for our, I believe the last case, Charles Palou, and I apologize if I mispronounced that. Block 113, lot 37, 51 Wanamassa Point Road, Ocean, Zone R6. This is an application to construct a rear deck on a pre-existing non-conforming property. The attorney for the applicant is Mr. Paul Fernicola.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the board. Paul Fernicola on behalf of the applicants, Charles and Nicole Palou, 51 Wanamassa Point Road. Yes, we're seeking a variance for a rear deck on the home. The deck is at 5 feet on one side and 6.6 feet on the other side, whereas 10 feet is required for accessory structures in the RC zone. We have two witnesses tonight, Jonathan Wolf, the architect, who designed the renovation of the home, as well as the deck plan that was included in the application package. It's 2 sheets, A1 and A2. And then we have a professional planner, Andrew Janu, who's also going to testify.
Okay, and who would you like to testify first?
We're going to call the architect, Mr. Jonathan Wolf, first.
Okay, Mr. Wolf, raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth. You're muted.
I swear.
And have you thank you. Have you testified before the board previously?
I have not.
Okay, will you tell us about your credentials, please?
Certainly. I graduated with a Bachelor of Arts from New York University in 2002, followed by a Master of Architecture from the University of Colorado in 2006. Since then, I've worked in public and private sector, and before becoming licensed in New York and New Jersey in 2014, and for the past 8 years have worked for myself and my own firm, Jonathan Wolf Architecture and Design, and I'm now residing in Ocean Township.
Okay, thank you. We will accept your credentials. Mr. Fernicola?
Thank you. Mr. Wolf, did you design the renovation of the home at the property?
Yes.
And is the lot 40.76 feet in width and 135.9 feet in depth for a total lot area of 5,271 square feet?
That is correct.
And under the R6 zoning classification, is the minimum lot width 50 feet?
It is.
Does the property front Deal Lake?
It does indeed, yeah.
Now, including in the application, excuse me, package were sheets A1 and A2 dated November 15th, 2021. Did you prepare the deck plan?
I did.
Okay. Madam Chair, I think based on the other applications, you don't require the submissions with the application to be separately marked?
Correct.
Or should we mark those A1, counsel?
If you like.
Okay, so
We can.
A1 will be the rear deck plans. It's sheets A1 and A2. Mr. Wolf, can you describe the deck at the rear of the home?
Sure. The rear deck is an open wood deck. It's built on a number of concrete pier footings on wood posts in a typical open wood deck fashion. There's a small set of stairs on the east side that go down to the lawn.
Okay. Can we turn the screen over to Mr. Wolf so you can pull up the deck plan, please? Okay.
That's all right.
You can pull it up. Let's show the deck.
Okay. Let's see. So here we have the rear of the home as it faces the lake, Deal Lake on this side. There's the small site plan. And then picking up here on the plan details, you can see this asymmetrical space is the new open deck, proposed open deck, I'm sorry, with stairs on two sides, that's north and east, in a fairly typical open deck manner.
And the width of the deck is the width of the house, Mr. Wolf?
That's correct. The width of the deck matches the width of the house.
And what are the materials comprising the deck?
It's pressure treated dimension lumber.
Mr. Wolf, did you review the township engineer letter dated May 9th, 2022?
I've reviewed the letter, yeah.
Okay, there were two items identified in the letter. The first one asked for a description of the existing drainage patterns on the site.
Sure. So the site slopes fairly gently down and then somewhat more steeply down to the lake to the north. From a fairly flat condition at the garage. So it consistently all flows down to the lake.
Okay. Item number 2 in the engineer's letter, are there any grading modifications that may impact the neighboring properties?
There are not. If I may just provide a little additional information, we did not increase the size of the footprint back in 2019 when we proposed and started the project. We actually reduced our overall building coverage with the reduction. We removed a small sunroom that had been on the front of the house that was no longer structurally viable. So I would say no, there's no negative impact or any difference in impact really from the existing condition on the neighboring properties.
Thank you. I have no further questions for Mr. Wolf.
Okay, and you said you had 2 witnesses, correct?
Yeah, are there any questions? Are you going to open it to the public as to Mr. Wolf, or you open it at the end?
We can. Do any board members have questions or comments for Mr. Wolf? Okay, are there anyone from the public questions or comments for Mr. Wolf? Okay, looks like there's none, Mr. Fernicola.
Okay, we'll call our second witness, Andrew Janu.
Mr. Fernicola, I will stop sharing my screen with that, and please, if I can pull anything up, just let me know.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf.
Good evening.
Mr. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find, oh,
Beacon
there you go.
Planning.
I see Beacon Plan. Okay, Mr. Janu, will you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth?
I do.
Okay, and have you testified before this board previously?
I have many times.
Okay. Mr.
You're a
Fernicola?
Thank you. Mr. Janu, you're a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey?
I am.
And how long have you been a licensed planner?
So I've been a planner since 2003. I'm also a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. And for the record, I'm currently serving as the planner for the borough of Carteret, the township of Livingston, and planning advisor to South Amboy, Toms River, the borough of Freehold, as well as, Flemington Borough.
I offer Mr. Janu as an expert in planning.
Yes, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Janu, is the property located in the R6 zone?
It is located in the R6 zone, and it does abut Deal Lake. It's a unique property.
Have you had the opportunity to physically inspect the subject property?
I have.
And the setbacks for the deck are currently 5 feet and 6.6 feet, whereas 10 feet is required under the R6 zoning classification.
That's correct. And Mr. Higgins in his letter appropriately points out there's somewhat of an anomaly in the R6 district with respect to setbacks for the accessory structures to the rear. Mr. Higgins points out that if this deck were at a height of 3 feet or above, the 5 feet would be conforming. But when the ordinances were revamped, it required a 10-foot setback for any structures that are below 3 feet. So he properly pointed out this discrepancy that's appears to be specific to the R6 zone pursuant to his memorandum. But it is accurate.
And the height of the deck is 1.5 feet, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And specifically, you're referring to Mr. Higgins' letter dated March 31st, 2022?
I am. In preparation for this evening, we reviewed Mr. Higgins' letter as well as the CME letter and the relative correspondence that was submitted for this application to the township.
And do you concur with Mr. Higgins' opinion that based upon the 2014 change in the ordinance if this deck was 3 feet or more, that variances would not be required.
I do. I do.
Do you believe that the application for the variances is consistent with the intent of the zoning ordinance?
I do. The intent of the zoning ordinance obviously is to create a consistency. In this instance, we have an inconsistency between the 5 and 10 feet. But Mr. Higgins is on point in terms of the spirit of the ordinance being met by this application.
In your opinion, would there be any substantial negative impacts on other properties?
No, and quite frankly, prior to reading Mr. Higgins' letter, I had come to the same conclusion that we have in this area quite a few narrow lots. 40-foot is very prevalent in this area, and we do have open decks facing the lake along many of these homes. These decks are typically within that 5-foot setback, and in fact, the homes on either side of this property are being constructed the same, either being constructed. I say that because one of the homes is under construction, it has just recently been constructed but not CO'd yet, but they again have open decks within 5-foot setbacks.
Mr. Janu, do you, in your professional opinion, believe that there is a positive reason for granting the variance and there would be no substantial negative impact to other properties?
Certainly. Mr. Higgins, in his review letter, concludes that this would qualify under the bulk variance relief as a C1 variance, meaning there's an existing hardship because of the narrow nature of the lot. And clearly with the deck towards the rear and towards the lake, we're facilitating the enjoyment of that view and of that lake. We have other issues with respect to this lot in terms of a steep drop off to the lot and trying to create some open area for enjoyment to the rear yard. This deck accomplishes that. So with respect to the positive criteria, I do believe with respect to Mr. Higgins' opinion that we qualify, but I would also find that we would qualify under the C2 criteria, which is the balance test, meaning that the benefit outweigh any detriment. In this case, the benefit obviously is creating an open space for enjoyment of the rear yard where we have a sloping space that otherwise would be very difficult to place any type of seating or arrangement to that effect. And given that the neighboring properties are similarly situated, have similar decks and similar setbacks, and that the intent of the zone plan is met, I believe on balance that we meet this. I don't believe the negative criteria in any way hinders this application. I believe clearly the benefits outweigh the negative. And when we apply this to the hardship scenario, the negative criteria doesn't do anything that's detrimental to the neighborhood, doesn't impede on the neighbors, doesn't conflict with your zone plan. So I believe under both the C1 and C2, this qualifies for relief.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any board members' questions or comments for Mr. Janu? Okay, anyone from the public, questions or comments? Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Fernicola, anything else?
Just briefly, both the board's own planner and Mr. Janu both agree that it satisfies the criteria of both the C1 hardship variance and the C2 flexible variance. And for those reasons, we request that you grant the application. Thank you.
Okay. Any, well, if there's no other questions, if we can have a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll move.
Second.
Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Van Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yeah.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGennaro,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes. Okay, and if we can have a positive resolution for C1 and C2 variance, Mr. Steinberg. Okay.
Yes, for the accessory structure setback.
I'm not going to say it, but I'll move that for positive resolution.
I'll second.
Amy, please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Van Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Ashkenazi,
Yes.
Mr. Mamie,
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. DeGenero,
Yes.
Mr. Puglielli,
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair and members. Thank you.
Have a-
You.
Have a good evening. And that was the last case. So if we can have a motion to adjourn.
Wait, whoa,
Oh.
whoa, I'm running out the door. It's 9:06. I still have a few moments left. Holy crud. Okay. I'm working on rules and regulations for standards for both boards. We don't have any presently. They'll be reviewed by Mr. Steinberg and by Mr. Lechstein, and you'll be emailed them. We'll be needing to adopt them at the next meeting. That will be number one. Two is everyone will be sent out the transcripts or YouTubes for the last all the meetings for the Seaview acquisition so that we can have a vote. And lastly, you'll be getting emails for your collective availability for one of the Thursdays in July. We will try to keep it as far away from July 4th as humanly possible.
Okay.
See, 90 seconds. That was it.
Perfect.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good evening.
Have a good evening, guys. Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Night.